we shall not be moved. And when our burden's heavy, we shall not be moved. When our burden's heavy, we shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. Sing along if you'd like to. This is a coalition building here, so if anyone wants to join in, more than welcome to. We're fighting for our mountains, we shall not be moved. We're fighting for our mountains, we shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. Well, young and old together, we shall not be moved. Young and old together, we shall not be moved. So like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. We're building a mighty union here. Building a mighty union, we shall not be moved. Building a mighty union, we shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. That union is behind us. The union is behind us. We shall not be moved. The union is behind us. We shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. One more time. Well, we shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved.
Try that again. Good afternoon. Isn't that wonderful? Let's have another big hand for Josh. I want to welcome you all here, but I first want you all to know that that beautiful music and this microphone and all the sound we're doing today is powered by a higher power, the power of the sun. And that sun bus, which has solar panels on it, there's a story in that. I'll let Josh and BJ tell it later, but it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jonathan Socolo. I'm an attorney, an activist, and a writer. I live in Northern Virginia, and I'm so pleased to see all of you here and to welcome you to this program. Our air, our health, our future, the fight to save Union Hill. Yeah. We've got an exciting program for you today. Everybody can move in and take your seats. That would be great. We're going to start off with a prayer. I'd like to introduce Faith Harris. Dr. Faith Harris is Vice Chair of the Board for the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy and an Assistant Professor at the Samuel DeWitt Proctor School of Theology of Virginia Union University. Since 2016, Dr. Harris has served as Chair of Virginia Interfaith Power and Light, and she is also a member of the Governor's Advisory Council for Environmental Justice under both Governors McAuliffe and Governor Northam. Dr. Harris, please join us.
Good afternoon. Let us pray. All faiths recognize the sacredness of life, and to that end we offer thanksgiving and recognition, and we recognize the earth that sustains us all. And today we are gathered here in the sacred lands inhabited first by the Monacan people, but now by the people, the sacred people, and the sacred lands known as Union Hill. Created and established by freed Africans who had worked this land and created community out of what had once been imprisonment and bondage. And so we pray, thinking and hoping and asking for a renewed and refreshed vision, but not just vision, but renewed and refreshed energy to continue this fight. We recognize today the importance and the value of the work that we have all been doing these past 4 years, fighting to keep this land sacred and holy and clean, and to keep the air and the water drinkable and breathable. As we gather today, we recognize also the many, many people who survived the great storm, Dorian, and the survivors whose hearts are breaking, and who, as we watch and hear their stories, our hearts are breaking. Recognizing that the work and the fight that we're in is also for them. Recognizing that we don't want to see Category 5 storms all over this world, and recognizing that we were so very fortunate to be spared 40 hours of 200-mile winds. Today we recognize and we ask for the extra strength, the perseverance, the wisdom, and also the good favor to win this fight, to save this community, to save these sacred people, to the sacred lands. We thank you for the gathering of all those who are here today. We thank you for the unwillingness, the willingness for them to not be torn apart by the forces that would see us divided. And so now we offer our time to the Great Spirit, the Mother, the Father of us all. Amen. Amen.
We're so pleased to have everybody here today. I see a lot of veterans of this struggle who have been coming back again and again, day in and day out for these past 5 years to save this beautiful and historic community. I see a lot of new faces, and to those of you who are hearing the story of Union Hill for the first time today, we welcome you with open arms, and we urge you to join our struggle today. This event is co-sponsored by an array of organizations: the Sierra Club Virginia chapter, the Virginia Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, Friends of Buckingham, Friends of Nelson, Allegheny Blue Ridge Alliance, Virginia Interfaith Power and Light, Power, Protect Our Water Heritage Rights, Water is Life, Protect It, and Appalachian Voices. As was mentioned before, this event is hosted by nonpartisan, nonprofit organizations. We're not supporting or opposing any candidates here today. If any government officials or candidates are here today and wish to speak during the discussion, they are speaking in their official capacity if they have an official capacity, not as candidates, and we ask that they not discuss the election. So the question is, why are we here today? Well, perhaps the first question is, where are we today? We are, as Dr. Harris mentioned, on land that was stolen from its original inhabitants, the Monacan, who lived here for millennia before Europeans came and claimed to have discovered it. But in addition to that, we are here on land that was consecrated with the blood, sweat, and tears of African slaves who worked at tobacco plantations on this very land where we are standing. People who are buried here, which is why when Bishop William Barber III was in Virginia in February, along with with Vice President Al Gore, Reverend Barber said, "This is holy ground. This is indeed holy ground. The slaves who lived and worked in this plantation are buried here. The freedmen, their descendants who founded Union Hill after the Civil War, are buried here, and therefore this is holy ground." We are, in fact, on the ancestral land of Taylor Harper, a former slave who bought a part of the land he once toiled on this plantation land. And we're here to ask and to answer one simple question. What kind of Commonwealth are we? What kind of Commonwealth are we? Are we the kind of Commonwealth that turns its back on its most vulnerable citizens when they come under attack by powerful corporate interests? Or do we stand together? Do we do as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. told us to understand? We are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied into a single garment of destiny. Because the truth is this: we all breathe air. We all drink water. We are all Union Hill. Today we have a very special program for all of you here. We are going to hear from descendants of Taylor Harper and the others who founded this community after the Civil War. We are going to hear from the lawyers who are doing absolutely spectacular work to save this community, which must be saved. Yeah. We are going to hear from experts who have unearthed the history of this community and spread the word across the United States and around the world as to what this community is, has been, and will remain, God willing. We will hear from impacted residents who live here as well, and most importantly, perhaps, we will learn a little bit more about what each of us can do, because this is our Commonwealth, and we have a right to be heard when our citizens, our fellow citizens, are under attack. In June of this year, a friend of the court brief was filed in the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is going to hear this case on October the 29th, I believe. 28 members of the Virginia General Assembly signed on to that brief, and in that brief they said this: Union Hill is a living, breathing community where the American history of slavery, the Civil War, and Reconstruction resides, both in the cemeteries of former slaves and in the memory of their descendants. It deserves our protection and our respect. With that, I'd like to introduce our host for today, my good friend, the descendant of one of the founders of Union Hill, Richard Walker.
Good afternoon. I thank God for a wonderful day. No rain, no humidity, and all you folks showed up. This means a lot to me, and I'm believing to my family that we're getting the support that we look for, that we need in order to stop this bombastic, atrocious exploitation by Dominion Energy, as well as the Department of Environmental Quality, as well as Governor Northam. If you look here in this second row here, is my family. of which 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them reside right here within less than a quarter of a mile from where the supposed compressor stations to be built. My one cousin drove down here from New Jersey for today, you know, and I'm grateful to my family. I don't always do the right thing the right way, you know, but they know my heart, they know my spirit, that I'm fighting on their behalf. We have 1, 2, 3 generations of Harpers here right now. And there are at least 2 more generations behind us. That my great-great-grandfather, Taylor Harper, who was a freed slave that purchased a particular portion of this land for $15 back in 1887. This land has been in our family for over 100 years. And we refuse to allow Dominion, the DEQ, or the governor to come in here and take away that from us. I am determined to work on legislation that will stop eminent domain. That they will not be allowed, because of their own, you know, self-centered, selfish thought and thinking and wanting to become more richer than they are, to take and exploit and take advantage of individuals, of particularly, primarily people of color. I'm sick of it. I must give a disclaimer. I am not prejudiced. I am not racist. But I grew up in New Jersey where we didn't have the problems that Virginia has. I've come to Virginia and I've almost become a racist because I'm seeing the way that this administration and the way other white folk, other than you, treat black people. This is horrendous of what goes on in the Commonwealth of Virginia. If you see that poster there, Bridging the Gap in Virginia, that's my organization I started 10 years ago to fight the injustices of the justice system in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I'm in one or two prisons on a monthly basis, helping individuals that have been wrongfully convicted, giving insurmountable years of incarceration, you know, in order to get them released. So this has been going on. But here in Union Hill and Buckingham, you know, as a result of my family, did I get involved with this for about a year now this month. Where most of the folk that have been involved, the Friends of Buckingham, Sierra Club, and all other organizations, environmentalists, have been totally involved for 5 years, trying to fight this fight against Dominion big business and dirty money. You know, where individuals are being persuaded to do things on behalf of Dominion based on the money that Dominion keeps filling their pockets with, particularly the governor. I just got the 2-minute warning. We refuse to allow it to continue. And I need to give a shout out to Mindy Slotnick. You know, pray for her, send good vibes her way for her healing, as well as for Elizabeth McGowan, who is a devoted photographer, freelance writer for the Southeastern Energy News, that has covered the training we had with the solar training. But I appreciate you folk to help us continue to fight the fight to keep Dominion out of our area. I'm from New Jersey, like I said. New Jersey was known as what? The armpit of America. They were one of the most high pollutant states in the country when I was growing up. So every summer we come down here to fresh air. And I refuse to allow Dominion to take that fresh air from us. You can roll your windows down out here. You have to leave them up in New Jersey, but you can roll your windows down and get fresh air. You can wake up early in the morning, which I had to do when we were here in the summers, at 5 o'clock before the rooster started cackling. We had to be up milking cows, feeding chickens. Uncle George did not deny us nothing in the morning. So we want to preserve that and keep that in our family. We just had our family reunion last weekend. We had over 100 family members that showed up from all over the country, as far as Indiana. So we don't want them to have any trespassing or any eminent domain or easement to come up on our property that we cannot continue this legend of our family reunion every year. So continue to help us fight this fight. Thank you for showing up, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Richard. I'm in a similar position as Richard. I've only lived in Commonwealth of Virginia for 25 years, and I came from the other side of the Mason-Dixon line. And I've understood living in Virginia, particularly being involved in this struggle, that sometimes your enemies come after you. Sometimes those who say they're your friends come after you as well. Which reminds me of what I was told when I did move down here 25 years ago. I was told by a good friend of mine that you can always tell a Southern liberal, because a Southern liberal will lynch you from a short tree. Just putting that out there. Now, our next speaker, after Richard, is a woman who's been leading this struggle for 5 years, an impacted resident herself who founded an organization known as Friends of Buckingham and has been fighting day in and day out to hold Dominion accountable, to hold our leaders accountable, to fight this fight until it is won. I'd like to introduce my good friend, Chad.
Thank you, Richard. Well, I've been tasked with telling you what we've done, and we've done a lot, so I don't think I have time here in the time allotted to tell you, but it'll be 5 years this month of this struggle to save this community and to work with other communities who are also being impacted by the ACP and in other parts of the state by the MVP. We've discovered along the way that these pipelines aren't needed, they're not needed anywhere. And so I will begin with the beginning with the regulatory process that we went through. We started with FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, going to their listening sessions. When we started, you could make a public comment. They soon changed that to make it a private comment, and it would take you to a little room and they would take down your comments. So we did that in several different counties because they never had one here in Buckingham. I guess they didn't figure we were important enough or were going to actually push back enough, but we certainly showed them that we were capable of pushing back. And we proceeded to the water hearings and the air permit hearings. And backing up a little bit, we also went locally to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors because the location of the compressor station nearby that Richard was talking about is actually zoned for agriculture. So they needed to have a special use permit. So we filled the administration building, and just about every comment was, no, we don't want this, and we're very concerned about all of what it will bring, which is a lot of nasty pollution, noise, all the horrible things that go with a compressor station, which meanwhile kept going up in size. It started at 20-something and is now up to nearly 55,000 horsepower. That is an enormous compressor station. People here will be poisoned on a daily basis. My husband just showed up. My husband, maybe I should save that for my personal impact. Yeah. Because I'm wearing two hats here. I'm personally impacted, but I'm also, trying to work with an organization and many allies who have helped us along the way. One of the things that we did, I will also mention, is we did a demographic study, and Lakshmi Fjord headed that up. You will hear from her later, Dr. Fjord. And we went house to house, and we determined, I'm not going to get into it too much, Lakshmi, I'm leaving that for you, but we did determine that this neighborhood is indeed 83% African American. And yet, that didn't show up in the hearings, the air permit hearings. We'll see about that later. So, and we also did air monitor. We did some baseline air monitoring in the homes closest to the compressor station. So we would know what our air is like now, which is good and clean, and what it would look like if the possibility, and we're not going to let it happen, of a compressor station is actually sited here. We also did water monitoring, and we learned, a number of us learned how to monitor, not only did we monitor the wells of those closest, but we learned how to monitor our streams. And Heidi Divya, who's back here, our Secretary of Friends of Buckingham, she headed that up and did an enormous amount of work. So we've been very, very busy on the ground doing all of these things, everything we know. We've had local meetings, events, many, many events. Kay Ferguson came down for a whole year of events because she felt like we needed a little healing down here because we had been working so hard. And we were ever so grateful, and she had many, many, many Sundays of events, Circle of Protection events at the local churches. So we keep going. We keep going. We're not stopping. We get a little weary at times, but then we rise up again because it's important. This is our land. This is our air. This is our water. We live here. We need to claim it. We need to protect it. And we don't need just lip service from our legislators. We need real action. When the Advisory Council came out here on environmental justice and said, no, don't do this here, and advised our governor, it was ignored. So we need real action, and we need it now. Thank you.
Chad, thank you so much. I want everybody to take a moment and just listen to the sounds that we hear now. The compressor station would be less than a mile from here. The compressor station of this unprecedented size would sound like a 747 taking off 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You won't hear those birds if that compressor station ever comes. I would now like to introduce two of our experts who will give us more background on this community and the work they've done. These are two real heroes of this fight to save Union Hill. Dr. Lashmi Ford and Professor Mary Finley Brooke. Their dedicated research related to environmental justice, including the rich history of this community, has given invaluable support to frontline communities who are leading the resistance against harmful fossil fuel infrastructure, including the Buckingham compressor station. Dr. Fjord and Dr. Mary Finley Brooke.
My last name's Fjord, and that really matters to me because if you know anything about Henry Ford, you know he was extremely racist. So a lot of people just try to like sort of go Ford, and I'm like, no, get that J back in there. Not that the Vikings were particularly known for their egalitarianism. They are now. So anyway, I so appreciate the opening comments made by Reverend Harris. So I don't have to make any kind of those comments because of the notion of whose this land was. I was fortunate enough as an anthropology student to bring the attention to the Department of Anthropology's resident Virginia archaeologist, Jeff Hampman, about Monacan artifacts. Actually, we didn't even know they were Monacan artifacts. So I've been involved in this kind of historic study since basically I moved here in 1979 to help to be one of the community members to start Yogaville here. We were moving our whole Yogaville from Connecticut. So now I've used up like way up too much of my time. I need to start by saying I just want to make a blanket and very heartfelt apology to anyone in this community who has felt that outsiders, white people were coming in and, you know, making statements about the community. For a while, we weren't even going to be using the term race. I'm looking at the Harpers. This idea that I'm an expert. In anthropology, the expertise is in local knowledge. The true experts are the people sitting here who are descendants of the people who were enslaved here. I don't call myself an expert. I'm not an expert. I'm a collector. I learned some skills. I have a little toolkit. I then say, what is missing that I can offer? Like I'm looking at Kay and the circles of protection. We each would say, what can we do with what we know that can contribute here? So again, got my PhD in anthropology, but the most important thing to know about me is I'm a grandmother of 5 little girls. And all of the children are my concern. And that is what really this is all about, right? Everything that we do here, everything we do individually, that we do collectively, let it be towards restoring justice for the past and ensuring justice for the future generations. And let whatever we're going through be just a step, right? We're in it together. So it wasn't inevitable that Union Hill would become We Are All Union Hill. Not at all. It took day and night efforts by the local people here. I mean, kudos to other people, but it was the day and night efforts of the people who live here who said, we are going to disrupt the slow violence of these mechanisms of dispossession of our human rights, the rights of nature, that have been going on since the Monacan were driven from their actually ample economic basis here in copper mining. They were well known for it. So really what we're trying to do is emphasize the role of grassroots people, but receiving monetary, in-kind support to do the work needed to bring that expert knowledge out, which takes us to the erasures. Because this compressor station is the largest possibly in the nation, according to Al Gore, who said it to us in front of all of us in February, largest in the nation, it's also the largest of the 3 Atlantic Coast Pipeline compressor stations, one for each state. Why? Because the existing ambient air is so good, they could emit here at higher levels. So punishment for being good stewards of your land. And it just goes on and on like that. At every stage, there were 30,000 pages in the original 2015 Atlantic Coast Pipeline application. I did not read all 30,000, but I read many, because many thousands, and I have read many, many, many thousands over these 5 years. Why? Because we're trying to catch them in the act of lying and catch them in the act of misinformation. So in that first application, there were 0, 0, 0 cultural resources only for the county of Buckingham, where they want to locate the largest compressor station intersection of 3 existing Transco pipelines with a new Atlantic Coast pipeline. The only place on the Atlantic Coast pipeline we're going to have a metering and regulatory station, if it gets built, which it will not, excuse me, I shouldn't have said that, where they want to put these 2 huge pieces of infrastructure. What in the heck is a metering and regulatory station? Well, unlike industry standard of having compressor stations every 40 to 60 miles to make the pressure get more evened out, to lessen the health impacts, the emissions, the leaks, they want it 200 miles apart. So guess how fast, I can't remember that, how much pressure this has to be under. So I'm just going to take a minute, because my job is the context of people understanding what the threats are. And then later, I'm going to talk about what we can do. This isn't that part. This is telling you what's being co-located there. 1,440 psi's of pressure. Does anyone understand what that is? But that's the highest allowed that could happen here. Now, that was hidden in the FERC description in the FEIS because in one section they had compressor station that was going to be located at Woods Corner. The metering and regulatory station was going to be located in Buckingham, and all of the air emissions for the whole complex was located in Woods Run. Where the heck is that? So that is the kind of detail where you see the misinformation. They said that it was 29.6 people, but that was the person per square mile in the 2010 census for the entire county of Buckingham. And what they did was deliberately hide and erase what the EPA called a pocket of majority-minority. So that's why we went door to door. We had to do primary research because we were getting slammed by lies. So what do? You go in every home. We went to 100 households, 77 were home. We got the residents, we got their ages, we got their pre-existing health conditions, we got their uses for agriculture in this A1 agricultural zone. We made maps, we restored maps, we created household maps. And we did all of that because no one in the state was going to do it for us. The other thing we need to talk about is water, just very briefly. This co-location of the 3 pipelines of the Transco intersecting with the proposed Atlantic Coast Pipeline takes place in the James River watershed, a single source aquifer. Does anybody know what that means? It means that there's no other way to get water. And everybody most everybody in the county, but in this whole area, so both Yogaville and here, has only individual wells, some of whom are within 150 feet of the boundary. Now imagine that underground when they tell us in every public meeting we went to, we cannot guarantee that this will not leak into your water. So I am going to step away because there's no more time, but there's so many things that are, and maybe Mary will cover this, where this is a contest over expertise, and the only reason we've been able to do anything with it is because we have done the science ourselves. We brought scientists in when we didn't know. We went to every comment, we made these comments, we got comments from all over. And now our country is trying to destroy public participation, which is that community engagement. And we'll talk about that a little more. And also the fact that none of the science they use is peer-reviewed. Just like the tobacco industry, they just say these things, they erase all the known health impacts and then just make it all benign. So that's what we've been doing. We're peer-reviewing them.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mary Finley Brick from the University of Richmond, and I am super excited to be here. I'm going to go quick. I'm just recapping a couple of things so we can get to the actual experts. We're looking forward to hearing from residents of Union Hill. So I want to summarize the patterns of what we've just heard so far and what we know is happening across the state. Historical racism, institutional racism, environmental justice. We have disproportionate impacts in our air and our water. It's communities of color. It's low-income communities. How is that happening? It's happening in a lot of ways, but two of the ones that I work on specifically, and I know many other people here do as well, is certainly the gas infrastructure. So we've got the ACP, we've got Union Hill. We're in solidarity with the MVP, the Mountain Valley Pipeline, but it's not just that. What's going on in Charles City? We're getting 2 of the biggest gas plants in the country that are being permitted there. I will talk more about Charles City, but one of the things you need to know there is they have a toxic landfill that is leaking. There's leachates going into people's water. They've been out of compliance. You're going to be hearing about it from DEQ. What else about that landfill? They say that it's a green energy project, that it's for capturing methane, that's renewable energy. That's not renewable energy. We know what green local energy is, and Richard's going to be talking about how we can do green local energy here in Buckingham that is not capturing methane from toxic garbage from out of state. We do not need to be importing garbage from other states with low tipping fees and poisoning communities in Virginia. It's a pattern. There's a landfill in Buckingham. There's a landfill going in Cumberland. There's a landfill not going in Cumberland. They've permitted it, but it's not happening. There's a landfill that there's a couple of landfills in Charles City. These are patterns. What can we identify from these communities? They are all predominantly people of color. The people who are most impacted by that toxic infrastructure are low-income families. That's a pattern. What's the other pattern? Our elected officials are not accountable. So we go about them, they just take them on the record and pretend that nobody spoke. And as Dr. Fjord was saying, we've spent a lot of time getting really well-documented evidence of what local people's concerns are. It's incredibly valid, it's incredibly true, it's very peer-reviewed. If you look to the literature, our DEQ does not read any of the scientific literature. I can tell you they are highly uninformed. So what are these patterns? Lack of accountability, not listening to impacted communities, rubber stamping. They've known before on every single one of these permits what they were going to do. They did a couple of little tweaks to make it look like they were doing their job. We're going to be finding out from our legal team that often that there is not compliance with what needs to happen. There's a lot of state institutions that are trying to kind of cut corners and get things through quickly. Luckily, we do have lawyers who have been able to bring that forth and to win a lot of legal cases. So how are we going to win? Our team, let me go through what our team is and then I'm going to wrap it up. So what is our team? Certainly we have amazing legal advice and we're going to be hearing some of that today. We're going to hear what's out in front of us. We have amazing NGO non-governmental networks. Look at this organization. Look at the number of organizations that pull in for all of these events, for the comments, for the facilitation, for the food. Many people are working behind the scenes. We appreciate you. We don't know who that is. We have academics, but not just academics. People who are willing to work at the community level to provide that evidence, to make sure that local voices are respected and heard. And we are going to be able to hold people accountable because we have shifted this process. They know they can't get away with this. I'll talk about things we can do moving forward, but most importantly, it is making sure that voices of local people who are impacted are being magnified and are being heard, because that's how we win. That's how people know this process is not listening. Our leaders are not listening. So we're going to fight. We're going to come back to what people can do after you hear several of presentations. Some of the things we want you to know about are ways to get involved in local renewable energy, ways to get involved in historical preservation, and I'm going to be showing some risk mapping and some ways that we can be involved in keeping our local communities safe. But the main thing I'm going to say is what you've heard already. There is never going to be a compressor station in Union Hill.
Second that. This community is truly blessed. This community is blessed with a rich history, with residents who descend from a rich history, who are fighting and continue to fight and have been fighting for more than a century, and who are determined to win and to preserve this community. It's blessed by others who've come to this community, who've understood the history, and who have supported the fight to save Union Hill. And it's also blessed by a legal team that is prepared on October 29th to go into court to talk to three people who I assure you will be listening. The panel of the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. You know, I've been a practicing attorney for 35 years. I've read a lot of legal documents. I'm not doing the legal work on this particular case, but I've read every piece of paper that's been filed in the Fourth Circuit on this case, as well as some others having to do with the Atlantic Coast Pipeline and the Mountain Valley Pipeline. The legal team that is representing this community is second to none. Second to none. They are doing an absolutely superb job. Which means we expect them to win. As they have won before, they have gotten multiple federal permits thrown out for the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. So it is my great pleasure at this point to introduce to you Greg Buppert, Senior Attorney of the Southern Environmental Law Center, who's representing Friends of Buckingham in the lawsuit fighting against the Buckingham Compressor Station, and John Mueller, who's Vice President of Litigation for the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, who has joined Friends of Buckingham in challenging the compressor station that threatens Union Hill and the entire Commonwealth. Greg and John.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Greg Buford from the Southern Environmental Law Center. I'm really glad to be here with you all today. For the last several years, my colleague David Neal and I have had the privilege of representing Friends of Buckingham, and in the challenge both to the air permit for the compressor station and in other court cases. And it's been very inspiring for us and for the whole team at SCLC. I'm going to talk to you about, there's a number of cases, and if I was going to talk to you about all of them, it would take, I'd be talking to you for the next hour. So I'm going to focus on one, and then I'll turn it over to John, and he will be talking about the case involving the air permit for the compressor station here. But before I do that, let's remember where we are. Dominion announced this project 5 years ago in a press conference that with the governor. And 5 years ago, Dominion wanted us all to believe that this was inevitable and a done deal. The project was supposed to be in the ground and operating. Can you all hear me?
Can you talk a little louder?
I can definitely talk louder. The project was supposed to be in the ground and operating in November of 2018. There's been no construction in Virginia. There's no compressor station in Union Hill. And in fact, over the whole length of this project, Dominion has only installed 35 miles of pipe. That's less than 6% of the entire project. So we are still in this fight, and this pipeline is not a done deal.
That's right.
I'm going to talk to you about the case involving the U.S. Forest Service. You remember last December, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals in Richmond threw out a permit for the Atlantic Coast Pipeline to cross national forests west of here, the George Washington National Forest and the Monongahela National Forest. And one of the reasons in that decision was that the court concluded that the Forest Service didn't have legal authority to let the pipeline cross the Appalachian Trail. Now, importantly, the court did not say, the Fourth Circuit did not say the Appalachian Trail is a barrier to this pipeline, or is it a barrier to all pipelines in the east. What the court said is the trail gets its highest protection as a unit of the National Park System on federal land, like the National Forest. But the trail doesn't run only on federal land. It runs on state land, and it runs on private land. After that decision, Dominion had a choice. It could reroute its project to find a lawful crossing in compliance with the court's decision. But as we all know, Dominion has stubbornly, in fact arrogantly, stuck to its plans for the Atlantic Coast Pipeline and has not willingly changed the route, changed the location of this compressor station, or taken other steps to accommodate the people and resources that will be affected. What Dominion and the Trump administration did instead was appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. Last June, a few months ago, they asked the Supreme Court to take the case. And what I want you to know is that the Supreme Court doesn't take every case that's brought to it. So Dominion and the Trump administration have asked the court to take the case and review this Appalachian Trail decision. We had a chance to respond. We did that last week. We opposed the court taking the case. And if you want to see the reasons we opposed, the reasons why we think the court shouldn't take the case, I'll refer you to the brief. The only question, and this is really important, the only question before the court right now is, should it take this case? And we'll get an answer to that question during the first week in October. If the court takes the case, please know that doesn't mean Dominion wins. That just means we have a case. It means a lot more work for us. We have to write some briefs. We have to go argue the case in the Supreme Court. But that doesn't mean Dominion automatically wins that case. And I think Dominion, if the court takes the case in the first week of October, I think we can expect Dominion to spin that very hard in the press, like they have all along, that this pipeline is inevitable. The Supreme Court's taking our case, we're winning, we're going to build this pipeline. I want you to know that's not true. If the court doesn't take the case, that means the Atlantic Coast Pipeline can't cross the Appalachian Trail on federal lands. Dominion, we expect, and we should be prepared for, will immediately go to Congress to try to change the law to allow its pipeline to cross the Appalachian Trail on federal land. And one of the most important things we all can do is contact your representative in Congress, let him or her know that you oppose the Atlantic Coast Pipeline and that Dominion shouldn't get special treatment. It shouldn't get to change the law for this project. There's more we could talk about. There's a case against FERC, going to oral argument in the middle of October 16th. SCLC represents the Friends of Buckingham in that case. One of the important issues in that case is whether or not FERC considered the effect of this project on the environmental justice community here in Union Hill. And of course, there's the case going before the Fourth Circuit on October 29th involving the Union Hill, the air permit for the Union Hill compressor station. Let me wrap up. Dominion has lost in court 5 times. At least 5 times. It's time for the company, thank you very much. It's time for the company to give up on this dangerous, destructive, and unnecessary project. Dominion blames all of us for not being able to build the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. But let me let you know that, and I think we all know, that its problems are entirely self-inflicted. Yes. It never made sense to build a pipeline through a national park, 2 national forests, and Virginia's steepest mountains. It was never reasonable or fair to put a compressor station in Union Hill. But Dominion is arrogant. It thinks it can tell us what will happen with our land and our communities. It is up to us to make sure they know they are wrong. Thank you.
I'd hire him, wouldn't you? I know he's free. That's what we do. Hi, I'm John Mueller. I work at the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and I wanted to say, that I'm honored to be here, and I'm honored to be able to represent you. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our work on the compressor station with SCLC and our members and Friends of Buckingham. But I also want to tell you a little bit about connections, and I'll have to tell you, this isn't my first time to Buckingham. I actually grew up in Charlottesville, and as a young high school student and then in college, I used to come here and deer hunt. I wasn't very good at it, but I actually used to come here a bunch, and I never thought back then that I'd be standing in front of you all talking about
a fight in the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals to stop a compressor station. Actually, I think my dad thought I was probably going to end up being a house painter. But I'm really, I'm privileged and I'm honored to be here, and I want to thank you for putting your trust in us and allowing Greg and Dave Neal and I to represent you all. So I think, you all might be asking yourself, so why is Chesapeake Bay Foundation involved in this case? And I'll tell you, it's a couple of things. Yes, we represent the bay and the waters of the bay and the natural resources of the bay, but we understand that there is a connection with all the streams in the mountains and the rivers like the James that flow to the bay, and that what happens on the land ends up in the bay and harms the bay. We also understand that it's more than just about the natural resource. It's about people. That those natural resources are connected to all of us. Richard talked about how we're all really kind of brothers and sisters together sharing this resource. And so we firmly believe that the Atlantic Coast Pipeline is the wrong thing for Virginia, wrong thing for West Virginia and North Carolina as well. Because because it's going to harm water quality. The runoff that's coming, we've watched happen, and you all probably have seen with the Mountain Valley Pipeline, with these heavy rainstorms, the amount of mud that's running into our pristine trout streams and rivers and flowing eventually to the bay is unimaginable. And DEQ knew about this. We told them about this time after time, and now they say they can't do anything about it, that they're on this collision course with destroying our environment. And we say no. We say that there is a way to stop this, and we think that not the only, but one of the biggest chances we have right now is to win in court. And so that's why we've teamed up with SELC and with our members here. Some of you have been declarants in our case to support our standing to be in court, and I want to thank you very much for that. You've shared a lot of your personal lives with us to be able to tell the court why we belong there, and we thank you very much. And we're also interested in environmental justice. I'll talk some more about that later, but we firmly believe that, again, with that connection with people with the water, that minority communities have often been left out of decisions about permitting, about the siting of industrial facilities like this compressor station. And we feel that it is up to us as a Bay-wide organization to stand with minority communities and to help them have a voice in court where they might not normally have that, and to present their rights in court. So that's another reason why the Chesapeake Bay Foundation is here. Before I got to the Bay Foundation, I worked at the Justice Department. I represented EPA. I'd like to call it the good EPA back then, that knew actually what it was doing, and that took enforcement actions. And one of the things that they did is they went after the coal-fired power companies. You might be familiar with some of their names. Southern Company, Duke, Dominion, all operated coal-fired power plants illegally for decades. They violated the Clean Air Act, and I was fortunate enough to work on cases that sued those companies and others to get them to put on control technology that would stop air pollution that harms our environment and that harms human health. And along the way, I got to meet some fantastic individuals, some experts in particular fields of engineering, air modeling, and human health. Some dedicated, really, I would call them public servants. They work for a fee, but a very reduced fee, and they're dedicated to protecting natural resources and human health. And so when we got to learn about the compressor station here in Buckingham, and we believe that to stop this compressor station will also, like crossing the Appalachian Trail, if we're able to defeat the compressor station, it will stop the pipeline. So that's another reason why we are involved in this case. So when we heard about the compressor station and the air permit, I thought of those men who would work for us at the Justice Department and hired them to do some expert work for us. We hired Dr. Andy Gray from California to look at Dominion's air modeling. So they projected to DEQ what the emissions were going to be from this plant. And there's a friend of mine from DOJ who wants to come help us. Sorry about that. That was pretty good. And so Dr. Gray is an air modeler. And so he took DEQ's emissions and what they project is going to come from that plant and determined what was going to fall from the air and what was going to impact the surrounding environment and ultimately human health. That data was then given to Dr. George Thurston, a professor at NYU, who has worked for EPA, helping that advisory levels are going to be safe. That's false. People will be harmed. They're also emitting formaldehyde, and formaldehyde is a cancer-causing agent. The levels here in Union Hill are going to be higher than anywhere else. The levels of particulate matter in Union Hill are going to be higher than anywhere else. One of the other things that's pretty insidious about particulate matter is that it seems to have more of an adverse effect on African Americans. And in fact, FERC pointed this out in its environmental impact statement, that African Americans have a disproportionate impact from asthma attacks and respiratory disease. And a lot of people say, well, what the heck's that got to do with respiratory disease? Well, if you can't breathe very well, even if you're struggling to breathe, that makes your heart work harder. And when your heart works harder, it causes people to die prematurely. And so that's why there's no safe level for increased PM. And the other thing that's a little kind of wacky about the way DEQ and the Air Board have looked at air pollution in Buckingham is they basically penalize you because you've got clean air now. But what they fail to recognize is that the increase in PM in this region, in this area of Union Hill, Dr. Thurston looked at the modeling data, looked at Dr. Ford's data, the age, gender, and pre-existing health conditions of the people that live here, and found that the people here are going to be impacted up to 30 to 40% times more than anyone else in Buckingham County, than anyone else in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Now that on its face is unfair. And we've told the Air Board that repeatedly, we told DEQ that repeatedly, and one of the things that's astonishing is the Air Board has an obligation to determine whether siting this facility here is the appropriate place. If you read the record, and I have several times and I know Greg has, they don't mention Dr. Thurston's work ever. Ever. Now they may say, yes, we recognize that maybe Union Hill is an environmental justice community, but they don't put those words to action. Just recently, Governor Northam was speaking about the introductions of the first slaves into Virginia. And he talked about environmental justice in Virginia and how it had to be more than just words, that those words had to be translated to action. Well, that hasn't happened. And that's why Greg and I and the members of CBF and SELC are committed to standing with Union Hill in court to defeat this air permit. Yeah. Thank you.
Just to talk, we're here to take some action. So we're going to take some action right now. We are honored today to have 3 special guests with us. And I want to tell you a little bit of a story if I can. When Governor McAuliffe was leaving office, right before he left office, quietly and with no effect at the time, he created the Governor's Council on Environmental Justice. And that council met, and I went to many of those meetings. And after meeting over and over again and studying the issues, the Governor's Council on Environmental Justice recommended to then Governor Northam that he cancel, that he do everything he can to stop the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, the Mountain Valley Pipeline, and the Buckingham Compressor Station. And do you know what Governor Northam did?
Absolutely.
Wrong. He fired the entire council. Disbanded it. He removed 2 airborne members who were prepared, I think, because I was at this meeting, to vote against the permit here. So the Governor's Advisory Council became history. But then they drafted a new executive order and they appointed a new Governor's Advisory Council. And we have here today 3 members of that council. Dr. Faith Harris, who gave the invocation at the beginning. Dr. Harris. E.J. Scott. And Hope Cupid. Where's Hope? If any of you want to come up here and speak, because this is the Governor's Advisory Council, but it is the People's Advisory Council, and the people will be heard. If any of you, either of you, any of 3 of you, would like to address us at this point, we can take some action right here and right now so that Governor Northam can hear our voices.
Yeah.
Let's have a big hand for Hope Cupid.
Hello, everyone. I've been here several times, and I was here when I was on the first Environmental Justice Council, and I was lucky enough to be appointed to the second. I'm hoping they listen to us, because what I'm hearing is Dominion has pretty much won. And I don't want to be on anything that's not going to help the people that mostly are impacted by this. It's enough happening to especially people of color, people that look like me, that don't have a voice. So to see this community and people come together makes me happy. However, when we get there in a couple of weeks, I think it's about 2 weeks, we're going to talk and really speak about what's happening here. That's why I wanted to come. There's no need for me to be on the council if I can't come and sweat with y'all. But I do want, I'm very grateful for the attorneys and for what we are doing as a country moving forward. So I want to say, does anyone else want to come and join me? I'm not on the council just for lip service. I want to make a difference. I'm very honored that I got selected, but I do want to speak and at least let them hear what you all are saying. Thank you.
I just want to reiterate that and to encourage you to keep coming to our council meetings and to keep speaking out and to keep coming and requiring us to hear your comments and your concerns. And we'll do our part to make sure that you have the time that you need. We're working in the background to try to make sure that that policy and procedure does not silence your voices. So please keep coming, and we're just so grateful that you have that you've come this far, and that we were able to come here and to be a part of trying to make sure that your air and your water and your land is protected. And I do want to say one thing, and maybe this is not very politically correct, but we're so sorry that Mary Finley Brooke is not with us again this year. She was an invaluable resource and voice on the council, and we just want to thank her for the work that she did.
Well, this is not my first time in Buckingham, and it won't be my last. We are having a policy meeting next week. I will assure you all that your voices will be heard at that meeting. And keep doing what you're doing, and we'll keep doing what we're doing.
All right.
Thank you so much, Faith, EJ, and Hope. I'd like to introduce now some very special guests, residents of this community, who are going to testify to their own personal experience and how they're being impacted by what many of us are calling the criminal idea of locating a massive compressor station in this beautiful historic community. I'd like to call on Marie Gillespie, Marie Haley. Is Marie Haley here? And John Laurie. If you can come up here and share your thoughts with everybody here, that would be great. As they're making their way up to the stage. Come on, John, don't be shy. I've heard you talk before. Oh, do you want to do one at a time? Marie come first? Yeah. That's fine. While Marie's coming here, I just want to reiterate what Dr. Fjord said earlier. The true heroes of this fight are the people who live here. The true historians of this fight are the people whose history lives and has been buried here. The true heroes are with us today. The true people who are going to be impacted by whatever is decided are here with us today, and we are so proud to be able to have them with us. Marie?
Thank you for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. So nice to see you have come to visit me. You know, they have the old saying, I knew you would come and I'd bake you a cake. Well, I didn't bake a cake, there are a few brownies over there. You did pass my house, you didn't know it probably when you came here. If you made a right-hand turn from 56 onto 663. And you saw where there was some cutting. You can't see too much of the cutting now because it's grown up. But my house is right next to that. And so as you go back, you see the first, go back that way, it'll be the last mailbox on 270 Union Hill Road. Well, it's been a long trip here, but it's been worth it because all of you have been by our side. Chad, all the members of the Buckingham, Friends of Buckingham, Friends of Nelson, Environmental Protection, so many people that I can't name them all, who stood by us and who've been a part of us. In the shirt we are, have been a part of us ever since our inception. We never felt alone. And that's important, that you don't feel alone. You don't feel defeated because you have friends who can standing by your side. I'm going to let Bob Abrams back. He said, give me half a hug and get the rest of it. Well, yeah, impacted by this situation. Not who is going to be, but who is already impacted by this situation. I was fortunate enough to, my family and I, my husband, to be able to move here when we retired from the large metropolis. It was wonderful to come here. We had found the land 22 years before we moved here. We had been here 22 years. It was like 40, almost 50 years that it was so beautiful, and we met such wonderful people. So we said, isn't it great that we picked the right place to be with our ancestral friends, and we can continue to grow and develop. And I say grow and develop because Tatiana was one of my former students, and you may hear from her today. She's grown to be a fine young lady who listened to the teacher. Well, impact. When you wake up in the morning at 6 a.m. with the birds, that's fine. When you wake up in the morning at 6 a.m. with this large, loud noise, that's not fine. When you go to see what it is, and you see the trees, you come up, just beyond my tree line. Trees were just going down, just going down. I said, what is going on? No one said anything to me about that. The Dominion had told me, had showed me at one point where the pipeline actually crossed my driveway. And when I asked them what was I supposed to do, they couldn't even give me an answer. Then the next thing I know, that they had moved that little orange sticker. It was just down a little bit ways, not on the driveway, but certainly right next to with eyeshot in the wintertime to the house. I was furious because I said, I don't know what's going on here. My husband isn't well. And he said, oh, what are we getting, new neighbors? I said, no, not those, darling. Well, I decided that I was going to see Dominion myself, who I could see from there, to let them know they had some nerve to wake me up at 6 o'clock in the morning, knocking down trees that I know nothing about. So when they had their employment opportunity, I said, I'll catch them there. And I did. And I got hold of 3 of them. They didn't know what I wanted to talk about. And did I give it to them? I gave them all out. And so much so, they did apologize. They did apologize, and they promised that. I said, you know, it doesn't have to be because there's somebody living adjacent to you. I live next to that forest. That's human to me. That's life to me. It doesn't have to be walking on 2 legs, but it's still life. So they agreed that they will always notify the people or whomever is adjacent to where they're going to drop the trees. Just got something the other day about water. They've done my well. They've done my house structure. I said, why are you doing the house structure? I mean, you said that everything is going to be all right. Why do you have to come in? Well, just in case. I said, yeah, just in case. I said, why do you have to do the well water? And that's what bothers me more than anything. That my well is within sight of the pipeline ditch. I don't know how it's going to be saved from being polluted. So that's the impact already is that I'm worried, the worries that I carry. I try not to carry them because I believe in the Lord and that He'll make everything right. But I'm a poor human that remembers all of the sad things that happened to people who, you know, had no voice. So I'm each day I'm looking, I get something, or every other day I get something at one time from Dominion, not too much from them anymore. Try to stay away from them and all their concerts. But, you know, as I said, I'm concerned because the pipeline's not going to come, but I mean, the way they look to the pipeline. I have a granddaughter. She just spent 6 weeks with me. She's 8 years old. Her mother sent her night nebulizer and this medicine, some pills. 8-year-old taking a pill by herself. She knows how to do it. But the whole time that she was here, she didn't have to use that nebulizer. She didn't have to take that injection. No coughing, no tightness of the chest. This is what I want for her, because someday she may be living here, even if it's only for 6 weeks, but it may be longer. So I'm concerned for Tatiana's little daughter. I'm concerned for all of the children in the neighborhood, and also for the elderly. We have serious illnesses on this road. Some could not be here today and send their regards to you. We are being impacted every day because we have this over our heads. And I hate to think about it, us not winning, because I know what that would mean to me. I mean, next door to the pipeline, and less than a mile from the compressor station, I might as well start looking for someplace else, because I don't know. So I'm going to fight along with you, not only for me, but for my neighbors, and my neighbors, and my neighbors, because we are doing the best we can to raise our families, to give them the best that we can. And here's somebody that's bigger than us, just coming down and trying to take us over. And they're doing it in such a way that around about, so that we don't even try to think we don't know it. But we got our law group that they know how to find out what they're doing. So I ask you to continue to support us. I hope you enjoyed the day. And Richard, you're to be applauded for your extension today. It's wonderful. And if you ever wondered what it was like, you know, sometimes when I'm outside in my yard, I say, well, if I was back there in 1818, I wouldn't be able to stop and get water. I wouldn't be able to go inside and lay down when I got tired. Because the master would be over top of me. So as you came down that road, I hope you had a sense of what it might have been like for those slaves that lived here and worked here and walked those roads every day. Not only in such beautiful sunshine, but in rain.
Good evening, everyone. I certainly thank God for this privilege of being here and enjoy seeing you here today. This is indeed a pleasure. My name is John W. Laurie. I grew up in this area a few years ago. All these surrounding areas, I used to walk through the woods. We had many paths. We kept the roads open so we could walk at night. Many memories, good memories. And I grew up on my grandfather's place. It was a small farm off the Union Hill Road, approximately a quarter mile from here, on Laurie Lane. In 1963, I left for the military. And after the military, 4 years of the Air Force, I decided to stay in Southern California. For 4 years after the Air Force, 35 years on my job there. Then I decided to come home. Because of the Four Seasons and this pristine air, these rolling hills, and such great memories of the people here. These people were, it was all what some of the young people said that they were homeless. They all knew each other. They really took care of us growing up. We could go from house to house. And it was really a good neighborhood. But over the years, I missed the Four Seasons, the clean air, and the quietness. Living in the city is not necessarily quiet. The air is not necessarily clean. So I wanted to come back. Somewhere, approximately 5 years ago, we heard rumors of a compressor station or special use permit for a compressor station was being considered. From that point on, life began to change for me. I could not imagine living in this community with a proposed compressor station of the magnitude 57 to 58,000 horsepower, polluting up our air, definitely destroying our water, contaminating our water. Since I was raising cattle, garden, in the orchard, life would not be the same. So, we had a group here called Friends of Buckingham, with Chad as a leader. She informed us, and we became involved. That's when the struggle began approximately 5 years ago. And we've been in the struggle since. But thanks be to God, it was not only in Buckingham the struggle was, but throughout the state of Virginia, the coalition across Virginia, and even out of state that came to support. And along the way, we realized that it was not only Buckingham in a struggle, but there are many struggles due to corporate America. They seem to like to use the minority communities for these poisonous, noisy, polluting, whether it's the dumps, compressor station, chemical plants, put them in those areas. So the struggle continued. But along the way, we never lost faith. We've had much encouragement, professional help, which we heard much of today. Thank God for SCLC and that support. Not enough can ever be said about our coalitions group, how they have been there all the way, and the Faith Alliance group, who have been supporting, and also our different technology groups and our experts who have been with us all the way. And last but not least is our community activist, Richard, who came on board. So today I'd just like to say I thank God for being here, and I thank God for you being with us. And we will defeat this project.
Now we're going to hear from Faith Haley, who I believe is a third-generation descendant of Taylor Harper, who bought the land you're standing on in the 1880s. Marie Haley, I'm sorry.
Richard puts me on the spot because he knows I don't like cameras. I don't like speaking. But this is an important event, so I'm going to speak because my family is living in this community. And I grew up in this house until I was about 16 years old when my grandmother passed away and we all moved away from here. But we still try to maintain this house because we feel that family is important, the legacy is important to us. Now, I know a lot of people feel that, okay, Dominion is going to win, so why fight them? Harpers are fighters. We're going to fight. My great-grandfather, Taylor Harper, a slave, and some people feel that, okay, this community is full of, started from slaves, whatnot, and that maybe it's a poor community and not as educated or whatever. Maybe they think because of that they can come running in, but I don't see this as a poor community. I don't see this as an uneducated community. We stand together. That house could talk. You would know what fun we had there. All the family, brothers and sisters getting together. And the stories we could tell. I love coming here. That's why I'm back here every year. I live in New Jersey, but I'm back here every year. And we have our family union here every year because we like to stand together. Now, to me, Dominion is just being a big bully. They are just coming in and saying, we are going to take your property and build this pipeline, even though we say that it's important to us that our great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather bought the land. It could not have been easy for a former slave to buy that property, to buy this property. It may have been $15 back then, but that was a lot of money for them. So I appreciate my great-grandfather. I don't know what his education level was, but it's not important. He had enough common sense. He had enough education to buy this land, to hold on to this land, and to preserve it. And it was passed down through the generations. So what I say is that no matter what happens, my family and I will stand together. Now, just to show you, when I lived here, which was many years ago, I got in trouble on the school bus. I never get in trouble, but once I got in trouble on the school bus. This bus driver said, "You're not gonna get on the bus tomorrow." And I'm thinking, oh yes I am, because I'm not coming home and telling my family that I got in trouble. That would have been bad news. So when I got to the school bus the next day, guess who surrounded me? My family surrounded me. And we all casually walked onto the school bus together. Now, I don't live here anymore, but my family lives here. So I will stand by them no matter what. Dominion, we will fight them. They won't get our property easily. We will fight them to the very end. So I appreciate the people who's coming and standing with us and fighting with us. But if everyone leaves us, we will be here fighting to the very end. Thank you.
Wow. So I haven't been here that long. I've only been here 35 years. I live about a mile from the location of the compressor station. I essentially live in this neighborhood with my husband, who is back here. And a lot of my worries when I first heard about this, and speaking as an impacted resident, were for our health. And I think that John talked a lot about that and the particulate matter. My husband works outside. He's a prolific stone sculptor. He's out there the minute he gets out of bed in the morning, and I have to kind of drag him in. Are you going to eat? Come on, I want to eat, or what, He's just out there all the time. You're all welcome to come by, those in the neighborhood, see what he's up to. He's doing some beautiful sculpture work. But he's there, and even though he wears a really good mask and takes really good care of himself health-wise, particulate matter, as John said, that doesn't matter. He will be breathing it for up to 10 hours a day, every single day, for the rest of his life, if we're able to remain here. So I'm really, really worried about that. So, but the other part of how I've been impacted is just the anticipatory stress of living with this. I'm a mental health provider here in the county, and I know about stress. And just waking up every single morning and saying one more day of trying to do this battle has been so difficult. And I know it's been hard on others, like Marie talked about that, Marie Gillespie. And I have to mention Ella, who's in the first row, who lives 150 feet from the property line Think about the stress that she's experiencing, not knowing what her life is going to be like if this thing happens, and it's not. It's not. And Ada Washington, who's also in the front row. The people here will really be affected. Thank you, John, for really going into that. Please don't think what Dominion tells you, that you're going to be protected and they're doing the most stringent things possible. You will be affected. And I worry about that. I worry about it every single day of my life. And this has been going on for 5 years. And I get crazy every once in a while. Thank God I have a husband who puts up with my craziness, because I spend so much time on this, hours every day, hours. And I do it for us, but I do it for you. I do it for the Harper family. I do it for Ella Rose and Ada Washington and Marie Gillespie and John and Ruby, who all have become such amazing, wonderful friends. And that's the wonderful part about all this, is that it has brought me closer, and I'm talking individually, to these wonderful people. So I appreciate that part of it. But it's hard getting up in the morning. But I thank you, and I thank our allies, the many people who've come today. We couldn't do this without you. Your support is just so amazingly needed and will continue to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. I know you all share with me the thought that I'm just in awe of the courage and determination of the people in this community. And you know, we started this program with a question, what kind of Commonwealth are we? And a question occurs to me, I wonder if the governor of this state and the attorney general of this state who are defending this compressor station have the courage to spend 1 hour in this community and look these folks in the eye and tell them why their lives must be ruined. But people who came down from Pennsylvania, who are veterans of a very long struggle there to fight the Atlantic Sunrise Pipeline. And we're so grateful. And he's a veteran of the 5-year fight to stop the Mountain Valley Pipeline, and he will share stories from the communities affected by the MVP. Russell?
Thank you very much for the introduction. I think we're in the speed round now, so I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to go through this as quickly as I can. Several of the speakers have mentioned this has been a 5-year struggle for all of our communities on the MVP and on the ACP. But I'm happy to report that 5 years later, today, there is still no fracked gas moving across the stolen farms and public lands Mountain Valley desperately seeks to condemn. Transpired in that time, 6 human beings for placing themselves directly in the path of that condemnation. Yesterday, the Yellowfinch tree sitters and supporters down in Montgomery County celebrated 1 year of a successful blockade of MVP. We've spoken about the Fourth Circuit Court vacated MVP's permit for water crossings for failing to adhere to Clean Water Act requirements, and MVP, as a result, still cannot bury their pipe in the National Forest or across the Appalachian Trail. I want to acknowledge my friend in the State Supreme Court might actually consider whether the mechanism through which pipeline companies seize land and farms without compensation is constitutional. Hey, Carolyn. And methane pollution as a more dangerous greenhouse gas than carbon has finally entered the national and global climate conversation. So more Americans today are supportive of aggressive action to reduce greenhouse gas pollution. And a recent Yale study showed that 6 in 10 Americans are now alarmed or concerned about global warming compared to 2013, the year before this fight started for so many of us. One last sort of recent development, a petition that many people under this tent helped work on to address the environmental injustices on ACP and MVP has collected over 44,000 signatures. So I'm thankful to be here today to continue to fight with you, to find new ways to fight, and to connect or reconnect with pipeline fighters across Virginia. Especially thankful to make the trip with Carolyn with Paula and Herman Mann, who are here somewhere, who are featured in that petition that I just mentioned. These folks have persevered, as all of you have, despite difficult times and tremendous losses. They remind us every day that we're all worth fighting for. And there will never be a compressor station built here in Union City. Thank you, Russell. I'd like to call back to the podium Dr. Lakshmi Fjord and Dr. Mary Finley Brook to share brief comments and some extra information. Stick with us, please, people. We've got a couple more speeches. We've got music. We've got food. So just stick with us, and we're going to wrap up shortly. Thank you very much.
The fish fry is amazing, I guarantee it. Okay, so this is the part where we talk about what we're going to do, what we can do. And I'm so glad that Russ went ahead because back in October of 2017, we held a People's Tribunal on the human rights and environmental justice impacts of both the Atlantic Coast and Mountain Valley Pipeline. First time we were together in one room, all talking about and testifying. Well, now we're working toward creating what's called an EJ Action Hub, and that I can talk more about. It's a platform in which all the fantastic things that we've learned how to do will be documented. We'll have videos, we'll have tutorials, webinars, and that is really how we allow this to go on, and then other new groups who come in aren't just starting over again as we all did, like socked upside the head. One thing that we all need to understand is that without environmental justice, let me just say, I tried to write this out so I wouldn't say it wrong. On a global scale, it's a fact that environmental injustice, environmental racism has cost benefits. If it weren't customary to site or change routing to locate toxic polluting infrastructure in poor, minority, rural, and including Appalachian, we say minority, Appalachian, Native American, African American, that have little collective political power. Not in my backyard pushback, which is very powerful and has moved those routes constantly, not in my backyard pushback by the privilege would have already ended fossil fuel infrastructure. So, a major cause, unknown, unspoken, cause of the climate emergency is environmental injustice. So every single person is harmed by it, and all of us need to work against to fight against it. So EJ Action Hub, the Union Hill History Project. So why is it that we said, gee, we need to have the stories of the people who lived here before, any family recollections? You know, we've gone back into these sealed plain documents trying to find records, but those are not the stories. What we want to do.
I'm moving really quick. All of you have a map. It is slightly larger than this one. You have a 3-mile map. This is a work in process. This is an ask for us with us. These maps were made by Stephen Metz of Visualizing Pipeline Impacts. What you're looking at here is the blast radius. I started crying last night, Marie, when this was sent to me because your house is in the blast radius. What we did is we put together the diameter of the pipeline and the pressure of the gas that would go through it. Those of you who just saw the Kentucky explosion, very similar to the Transco, 3 pipes under the ground of similar size, similar age, similar danger. These things do happen, they don't explode a lot, but when they do, they can be fatal. What we want to do with people from Union Hill is show the government what they have not taken note of, the dangers that are here, the gatherings that are here, the church meetings, the homecomings. What would happen if something happened to that compressor station or these pipelines where people were living, breathing, doing their daily activities? To get this accurate, we need local people involved. We need to figure out what the evacuation routes would be, what would happen with the compressor station. It depends on how much ammonia they're storing there, and it depends on a lot of things that they do, and we need to know what those implications can be to prepare you, but also to show our elected officials that they totally failed this community. They have not considered these risks. There are a lot of risks. You know what they are. We want to be accurate about them. We want to show there's some home places on here that aren't populated. There's a couple of places that are barns. We want to be clear about where people are living, and we want to be clear about what those impacts would be if the worst thing happened. But as I said before, there's no compressor station coming to Union Hill. So one thing we can say is not a lessons learned, but we can really lead the way on how you do this right, how you work with community members to show what these risks are, to make sure people's voices are heard, and to make sure that this stops. This cannot continue happening in Virginia. That's what we say about this Commonwealth. This Commonwealth is where we ended environmental racism.
We're getting ready to wrap up and proceed to the food portion of the program. I do want to mention, because Russell spoke so eloquently about Mountain Valley Pipeline, these pipelines will not be built. And one reason I know the Mountain Valley Pipeline will not be built is because the amazing work of the folks on the ground who are taking to the trees, going to the courts, doing everything they can. One event that's taking place very soon that you all can participate in, on September 22nd and 23rd, there's a two-day event that's being coordinated as part of the Global Climate Strike. As part of the Global Climate Strike, where millions of people, led by a 16-year-old Greta Thunberg, are going to be striking and calling on the adults who have failed them to correct their mistakes. September 22nd in Bent Mountain, some of you may have read or visited Red Terry, who was up in her tree with her daughter Minor last year. There's going to be a Circle of Protection, Bent Mountain, which is being produced by the amazing Kay Ferguson. Kay is one of the reasons I know that the Mountain Valley Pipeline will never be built. And then on September 23rd, not far from Bent Mountain, in Roanoke, there's going to be a tri-state rally bringing together communities from West Virginia, Virginia, and North Carolina to talk about the Mountain Valley Pipeline, the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, the Buckingham Compressor Station, none of which will ever be built. So I urge all of you to come out to those events, September 22nd, 23rd. You can go to Water is Life.
Water is Life Protected, or yeah.
Water is Life Protected. Look for the event, September 22nd, Circle of Protection, Bent Mountain, September 23rd, Global Climate Strike in Richmond. I'd now like to call back Richard Walker. He's going to lead us through some of the asks that we're asking everybody. We've already taken action today, folks. We've already asked that the three members of the advisory council listen to our pleas. They have responded. It's all on tape. We'll see if the governor's listening. We'll see if the attorney general, who plans to be in court on October 29th through his staff to argue that this compressor station should be built. Let's see if he's listening. Richard Walker will lead us in some thoughts on how we can all take further action to make sure this monstrosity is never built.
First of all, I really, again, reemphasize, I thank you folks for showing up. By you being here is letting us know that you are determined to fight with us. You wouldn't have showed up if you didn't give a hoot about what we were doing. So we appreciate that. Union Hill, as my cousin said, as Marie Gillespie said, as anyone else before me, Chad spoke, John spoke, this is a very stubborn community. All right, they are very resilient, you know, and as a direct result of folk like Andrea Mitchell, Chad, Kendall, all these folk, Barb Adams, Kay, is the reason why I'm in front of you now. I was not an environmentalist. You know, knew nothing about what goes on with saving the environment. It was these folk that I've called their names out, CCAN, Chesapeake Bay Foundation, that got me involved, educated me, and let me know how protective we need to be over this. You know, so what we've done, as a result, like I said, y'all put me on the front stage. You know, back in February when Al Gore and Reverend Barber was here. What we have done was we've established, because Union Hill is a food desert, it's a broadband desert, as well as a first responders medical assistance desert. That's been happening for all my life. I'm 61 years old and we've never had that out here. I fought the county supervisors and the government, the Commonwealth of Virginia, for have neglected this community for over 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 years. So it's high time that we do for us what they fail to do for us. So we've established a permanent Wi-Fi system at Union Grove Baptist Church, right down the road. So our young people that grow up here, have equal access to the internet like their white counterparts who have internet access down in the county schools. We did that back in June. We did a 40-hour, 1-week solar panel installation training. Tatiana was one of the representatives here for Union Hill, as well as an African-American woman. And we had individuals that are formerly and currently convicted felons that came and got trained. What we intend to do, Robert Dilday, is do a lottery system to try and get solar on the residents' homes that reside in Union Hill. That's what we're doing. We're about to abound in a major fundraiser in order to help get solar panels constructed on the rooftops of most of the folk in the community. The way we're going to initiate it is through a lottery system. We're going to seek their information, put it in a big hat, and draw names, and those will be the ones that we will start putting solar on their rooftop. All right, so we need your support. I've invited this joker 3 separate occasions. You know, he is yet to show up. I'm talking about that dude right there. Can you grab that? Him, that joker. Yeah. I've invited him several times to our events, and he's yet to comply with what we're asking. He went so far as to patronize me, which I really can't stand, by sending me to Matt Strickler. You know, I gave Matt Strickler both barrels. He should have never, he regretted that he even called me. You know, that's how they placated us and gave us him. I said, listen, I don't want you, but it looks like I'm going to have to take you in lieu of the joker that sent you to me. You know, I lost respect for our governor. I hate to say that. I'm sorry. You know, I've totally lost respect. But if you reach out to these folk on the Environmental Justice Advisory Council, all right, if you reach out to your local, and this is a hot race coming up, folks, you know, your local folk that got your best interests at heart, that'll be in the General Assembly, reach out to them and let them know that we need support in Union Hill, that we need support in the Commonwealth of Virginia, that we do not need any frack gas in Virginia at all, that all it is doing is enriching the pockets of Tom Farrell and Dominion, and we need to stop that. It has no purpose, no use, no nothing for the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's just for it to be sent, LNG to be sent overseas that they can get paid. That's all it is. Do what you continue to do. If you're part of an environmentalist group, stay involved with them. Help them to push the agenda of what we need to save our earth. You know, that knucklehead that's in the White House. He ain't got a clue. He's totally confused. Even the gas manufacturers and other folk are telling him that, you know, you're lifting these sanctions up, is all it's going to do is bring more coal and more methane. You know, granted, they're saying it for their own purpose so they can sell more LNG, but at the same time, Donald Trump ain't got a clue what they're talking about. So, please, I'm not supposed to be political, right? But I thank you again for showing up. This is very emotional for me at this point because of all the folk that have been standing behind our family to fight this fight. And like I said, I just got involved a year ago. And I guess because y'all think I convinced people so passionately through my lips that y'all said, let's keep pushing them. You know, so here we are now. I'm in the middle of this fight and I won't stop. Thank you for coming out.
Richard Walker is another reason I know this compressor station will never be built. We're about to wrap up now, and I'll just say this, and thank you all for your patience and your determination in listening to this incredible story here and watching this incredible movement bloom. I'm old enough to know, and I've also studied history to know this, that every social justice movement since the beginning of time has been powered by people in the arts, people who are willing to use their instruments, their voices, their talents in support of the movement. And there's no better example of that than the Sun Sing Collective, powered by the Sun Bus, solar power, 100% renewable music. And you're going to now hear as we transition into the food portion of our program. I know you're all hungry. We're going to hear from the Sun Sing Collective, Joshua Banna and DJ Brown, and Graham Smith-White, thank you. And with any luck, they just may sing a song that is fast becoming the anthem of the anti-pipeline resistance in these United States.
Hey y'all, thanks so much for being here. And we're gonna play the song. I think it is maybe the one that John was speaking of, and it's called "To the River," and it's a song I wrote and arranged with the help of some new and some old friends of mine this spring. DJ Brown included with the Sun Sing Collective, and around I think there might be past some lyrics in the process here. If you'd like to sing along, you're welcome to. But it started as a song for Larry Gibson, who is a man, Kafer Mountain, West Virginia, who resisted the onslaught of mountaintop removal for decades in his home and preserved his family's last land completely surrounded by a moonscape. And Larry fought till the very end, and his family still continues to. And I started writing the song, and it just kind of all came together when I thought about all the different types of resistance that people are offering in fighting these two pipelines in Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina. People going up in trees in Mountain Valley Pipeline, and celebrating a year of that now in Elliston. But anyway, I'm just so inspired by all of you folks and so many folks from across the state, and this song is dedicated to y'all. I'll take it to the river, tell you what I see. I see the truth in the water shining back up at me. Everything in time since the world began, feel it breathing in the air, feel it buried in the land. I'll take it to the river, I'll tell you what I hear. I hear the thunder in the distance, I hear the river say a prayer. Here come that company name.
'cause no river runs in vain. I'll take you to the river, I'll take you to the truth. Every life and water running through you. What are you gonna hold to? What are you gonna do? I'll take you to the river, I'll take you to the truth. This last time, everybody, all together. I'll take you to the river, I'll take you to the truth. Every life and water running through you. What are you gonna hold to? What are you gonna do? I'll take you to the river, I'll take you to the truth. I'll take you to the river, I'll take you to the truth. I'll take you to the river, tell you what I hear. I hear the thunder in the distance, I hear the river say a prayer.
We have the answer to that question. We're the kind of Commonwealth that fights for justice, and we fight for justice until we win.
I think maybe we ought to...
That we will win. I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win.
All right, everybody, we're going to win. We got no choice. Now let's eat it.